In this video, I'm going to be sharing how you can decoupage like a pro by sharing common questions I get asked all the time, as well as how to fix tons of mistakes that you may be dealing with on your next project. We're going to start off with decoupaging tiles to make coasters. Common mistakes I'm told people deal with and questions I get asked range from, should I add a base layer? Should I sand it? There's bubbling once I'm done sealing it. How do I fix it? How do I seal it? And what sealers work? Lucky for us, a really budget-friendly and good sealer that works you can pick up from Dollar Tree for $1.25. And most crafters use towels like these for the coasters, which I get from Home Depot. I would suggest stopping on over in their flooring section and grabbing some plain towels for 13 cents each. I picked up 4 and only spent 55 cents. Whenever you're decoupaging something that has a sheen, you want to knock it off in some way, so this way that the decoupage layer don't easily peel off. And one way to do that is to sand it down. Make sure you wear PPE, do this outside, and knock the sheen off, and then proceed with your decoupage. Another way is to take some paint and use that as your base layer. Now this is going to depend on the type of paint because you want to make sure that it's going to attach to the satin sheen surface. Multi-surface paints are great for this, and if you don't want to use paint and you don't want to sand it, you can always grab you some Rust-Oleum matte clear spray paint. You want to do this outside, make sure you wear your PPE. So no matter if you're sanding your piece or adding the base layer, it's really just going to allow your decoupage medium and your paper or your napkins to really stick to your project. The choice is really up to you. There's really no one size fits all. But what you're probably wondering is, what do I usually do? Most of the time I'm a multi-surface girl. I'll pop a layer of that joint on there, I'll let it dry, and then I'll hit it up with the Mod Podge dishwasher safe. Okay, dishwasher safe Mod Podge, it matters, all right? Don't try and use regular Mod Podge. You want something like this with tiles to have that protective layer against the water, okay? And for this particular project, I use my TDS Creative line tissue paper, and I use Mod Podge dishwasher safe over the top. I did 3 thin layers, and I do thin layers because it reduces wrinkling. I'm going to do the same exact thing here for a napkin. You can remix this idea with rice paper. You can absolutely use napkins, and you can absolutely use regular paper. The trick when you're using tiles and creating coasters, or you're creating little tiered things like I did there using the tiles, is really all in the application and in the sealers. They matter. It's not necessarily about the style of the application or the wrinkles. It's how can you protect it to make it last. So if you're sitting a hot coffee mug on there, or you're sitting it next to your sink and water droplets are going to get on it, or if you get food on it or coffee stains, you want to make sure that you can clean it up properly, and that relies on the sealers you use. And if you're wondering what I recommend, as of right now, April 2025, these are the 2 products I recommend. They are non-toxic. That is something I'm always looking for in everything that I do. And they work well once they're wet. The folk art doesn't have streaks like the dishwasher safe Mod Podge does, but you do need to put many layers of the folk art to make sure that you're not having any issues with that peeling back up, even if you're setting it outside. So put at least 5 layers of the folk art. Usually with the Mod Podge, if I do 3 thin layers, I'm good to go. Decoupaging ceramic can be really tricky, especially if you're new. I'm often told people get many mistakes about the application process. They're not sure if they should be putting a base layer on, how much to use, what to use, and if you should put a sealer on there when you're finished. Plus, what's the right tools to use to help you attach your materials to your piece. You can take this information and remix it using any type of ceramic piece. For our demonstration purposes here in the video, we're going to be using this one I picked up from Walmart. Ceramic is porous, people, so you're going to always want to put a base coat on here. For this project, I just used some good old multi-surface. You could absolutely use chalk paint, or you could put a whole layer of Mod Podge or liquid patina, whatever medium you would like, all over your piece. But definitely put a base layer because it's so porous, it's going to sop up everything. I wouldn't recommend using just a plain acrylic paint. It's going to absorb that. Acrylic paint is perfect for painting ceramics. It's not perfect for a base layer. So please keep that in mind. As you're applying your pieces, if there's grooves, a little piece of cling wrap will go a long way. And you may need to rotate this out if you notice your cling wrap is getting sticky or hard as the medium's drying on it, which is completely fine. But if your ceramic has little grooves in there and you're trying to get into the details with your material, this is perfect. Just be sure to not be using a whole lot of medium. You do not need a ton of medium to accomplish a look like this. And then pick whatever sealer you would like. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. Some good old Mod Podge will do the trick. Up next is application tools and issues. One question I get asked really often is, why don't I use a brayer? Why do I use a sponge? Is the sponge wet or dry? Can you reuse the sponge? What do you do when the sponge is hard and full of the medium? Can you reuse cling wrap? Why and when do you use cling wrap? And when and why to choose one over the other? The most common used item to smooth out decoupage and wrinkles is some cling wrap, people, and it don't matter if it's generic or not, just grab some cling wrap. I like to use these sponges. I picked these up from Walmart. I will cut them in half, okay? Because we're always working on a budget and we don't need the whole sponge every time. We just need a little bit. And we leave it dry, people. We do not wet our sponge. And you'll notice as you use this technique, your sponge will get hard, but don't worry, you can cut that sponge up and reuse it for so many different things. The sponge is perfect for placing your piece exactly where it needs to go and minimizing wrinkles, along with the cling wrap. The cling wrap works well also, but I noticed that if there is more Mod Podge underneath, if you don't do light layers, the cling wrap will tear your napkin. Not so much with rice paper or tissue paper, but definitely I've had issues with the cling wrap with the napkins, so I developed using the sponge. Just helps to minimize the wrinkles in general. But as far as brayers go, people, that's completely up to you. Brayers are just not my cup of tea. You feel what I'm saying? If there's someone watching this that loves brayers, please put it down in the comments and why you like using them. So this way other people that are interested can get that education. I've tried several different brands and they just don't work out for me like I expect them to. So I've developed other tools and ways of getting the job done. When I'm asked about decoupaging on metal, one of the most common questions I get is, should I put a base coat on it? And believe it or not, decoupaging metal is really easy. You just gotta get your setup right. For this demonstration, I'm just using the lid of this cookie tin. We're going to turn it into a little riser. And whenever you're decoupaging metal, you want to make sure you put a base layer of something on here. This really is your prep work. This really is going to lay out the best foundation for you whenever you're working with metal. And you can use a sealer if you would like, some clear matte spray paint. You can use multi-surface paint, whatever works best for you. I don't recommend using acrylic paint on its own. If you want to use acrylic paint and then put a sealer over it, you can do that and then begin your decoupage as usual. Allow your piece to dry and then again, seal it with whatever works best for you. Some good old Mod Podge would work. You could spray it over with your clear matte spray paint again once your piece has dried, allow it to cure a little bit, and you're good to go. One technique I love to use whenever I'm decoupaging is layering with stencils. I'm often asked, if you have to use a stencil to create a layered effect, do you have to use paste? Can you use paint? Do you seal it before or after? What's the best way to go about this technique? And the truth is, there really isn't a best way. If you want to use a texture paste, you could use it plain. You can mix it with color like I'm doing in this project. If you want to just use paint, you can absolutely do that. If you want to have your decoupage piece laid down and then apply a layer of sealer over it, allow it to dry, and then pop a layer of the paint or texture paste over it, you can go right ahead and do that. And you don't even have to use a stencil. You could just put texture over top of your piece using a sponge. It will help blend in the decoupage paper to the background and help it create a cohesive look for your entire piece. Do not limit yourself with layering with a stencil. I choose to layer with a stencil. You can get as creative as you want. Decoupaging a candle can add a little elegance to any space. However, it doesn't come without questions. It doesn't come without mishaps and trials and error. A common question I get asked is if you can use a blow dryer, can you use an iron? What about a heat gun? Along with the best material to choose for this. And let's not forget, can I still burn the candle when I'm all done? For demonstration purposes, we're going to be using one of Dollar Tree's candles. You can use whatever type of candle you would like with this technique. These are remixable ideas. You want to make sure to grab you a piece of parchment paper, not wax paper. Make sure it's parchment paper. And you're going to want to use a napkin. If you want the easiest thing to decoupage onto a candle, it really is a napkin. And the napkin is the only one I recommend burning. So if you're using tissue paper, if you're using rice paper, that is up to you whether or not you want to burn that. I don't recommend it. I would only burn any candle you decoupage that has a napkin on it. And you're going to want to make sure that for every candle you're doing this to, use a completely different piece of parchment paper. Wax will build up around the parchment paper after you're done doing this with each one, and it's just best to start with a clean slate. My preferred method is using a heat gun. I have people ask if you can use a blow dryer. Of course, people, I love winging stuff. Grab you a blow dryer, okay? Listen, just the heat, it will work. And for anyone interested, I will link several videos down in the description box that go over more detailed instructions for many of these projects I shared in the video in case anyone wants to try some of this stuff at home. Just click the more button right underneath and it will open up and you can click what you would like to check out. If you want to use a different material like tissue paper, regular paper, rice paper, you're going to want to use a different technique entirely. The blow dryer is not going to have it melting into your napkin where the wax seeps up through the pores. Just the napkins created like that. You're going to have to actually decoupage with Mod Podge on most of the candles. If it's LED, the same thing. That's been my experience. There can be a multitude of things that goes wrong trying to do this with a heat gun or an iron, like the design completely melting off, completely ruining the candle, waiting for the absorption to come through the pores because the paper is thicker and it is not meant to have things seep through it easily. There's just, like I said, a multitude of things. So this works out for the napkin, not for the other papers. A common way a lot of people do this is using an iron. I do this not hardly ever, but when I have, I put it on the lowest setting. Okay. Iron is not my favorite way to do this, and I'm going to show you why. If you look at the candle that I just finished, it's pretty sleek. Okay. It's pretty sleek. I trimmed it up with the X-Acto knife and there was no excess wax hanging over the top. Whenever I've used the iron on method, I'm going to call it for the candle, the iron on method for the candle, the heat will actually deform the candle as you're going. There will be times where even though you're distributing an equal amount of heat across the candle, if you're not going quick enough, it's going to melt it enough that it's going to start overflowing at the top and the bottom of the candle, along with pushing dents in. So you got to be real suave with that joint when you're trying to do this, because the point is, again, to get that wax to seep in so it blends with your candle. I also feel like it's extra messy. There's always extra wax all over the wax paper and clunking up on top of the napkin, which I don't usually have if I'm doing it with a blow dryer or a heat gun. And here you can see at the top where those divots are kind of developing from just, trying to get it to work, trying to really get this going. So this is just one of the reasons why I personally don't use or like the iron on method with the candles and the napkin. It's just not for me. And chances are, if you clicked on this video, one of your questions is how to deal with wrinkles. Well, buckle up, people, because there's multiple ways to do that. And we're going to start by bringing on in the iron. That's right, people. If you want a flawless look with your decoupage, the iron is going to do it. The problem is you can't really use the iron on every surface. I really recommend this mostly for wood. Now, what materials can you iron on? Well, People, there's a lot of them. First up, let's start with the fabric. Now this has worked really well for me with all the mediums and on different surfaces, except for whenever I've tried the cling wrap. But I've had people in my comments with more experience than me tell me the reason why I struggle is because I use this iron. And most of the time for my DIY projects, this works just fine for me. But it's been recommended to use a regular iron that can get above temperatures of 400. So keep that in mind if you go to use cling wrap and fabric. One of my favorite ways to use this method is with napkins. And that's whether you're printing on them at home or find decorative ones in the store. Wrapping paper gives you tons and tons of options, and you can pick this stuff up at Dollar Tree, Walmart, pretty much anywhere, and the designs are almost unlimited. One of the most common things I think to iron on is probably paper, and I'm talking a range of paper, whether it's regular paper from books, dictionary pages, cardstock, all those things. Super easy and super inexpensive. One of my favorite places to get thick paper that has really good decorative options is Hobby Lobby. And another favorite thing of mine to use is tissue paper. For this demonstration, I'm upcycling an old wood bread box I found. Now, whenever you're doing the iron on method, you're gonna wanna put a very thick, juicy layer of whatever medium. For me, in this one, I'm using some good old Mod Podge, and I allow it to naturally dry 3 to 4 hours before I iron it on. Make sure you use parchment paper. You can absolutely grab you the good old Reynolds parchment paper, you know, the good old Reynolds brand. But if you want to roll on with the generic, I use that too, people. Just, you know, I've had no issues, and it doesn't really matter whether or not you're using the shiny side or the matte side. Just use whatever side, okay? And then iron your piece on. I've done this. I have no idea how many times I've used this method. I've used this method so many times on wood items, whether it's Dollar Tree, whether it's upcycle, whether it's piece of furniture, and it works every time. When you go to seal over it, just keep in mind that thin layers of sealer help to prevent future wrinkling as you're sealing over. I've had some people say that they experience rebubbling over, and that could just be you loading a ton of sealer over top, praying that that's going to fix your problem or whatever. And if you notice that that does happen, allow it to dry and then take a piece of parchment paper, lay it back down over your piece, and iron it down with the sealer on top. That will also help. But the best way I recommend is always to just start with thin, small layers of sealer, and you can do as many as you would like. Usually, I do about 3. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Brandy. I'm the owner and artist behind the DIYstruggle.com. And TDS Creative, which is a product line where I create amazing quality designs and items for you to use and create beautiful home decor. Part of the TDS line features decoupage tissue paper and rice paper. Both are amazing products to use with the iron and materials less likely to wrinkle. I bet you didn't think the materials you choose had much to do with wrinkles, but they do. Napkins are going to be one of the hardest things for you to decoupage with. If you're a beginner, I don't recommend using napkins. They take a little bit of practice and can get really frustrating. So practice using something slightly thicker. I would recommend using a rice paper to start out if you're a beginner, or a tissue paper. This right here is part of my TDS Creative line. You don't have to use this brand. Not all rice paper is created equally. Mine does have fibers, little fiber pieces in there. You're gonna find that they're different. Some have like a fabric type material, but I do feel like rice paper, or using, this is part of my TDS Creative brand as well. This is a tissue paper. They're a little bit thicker and they give a little bit when you're applying them. You can also spray them with water, which can help reduce wrinkles as well. Now, if you want something to just figure out what it looks like to apply something, I do recommend using a thicker, like you can pick this up. They have this stuff, construction paper at like Dollar Tree, craft paper at Hobby Lobby. That's where I picked this up from. And it's easier for you to practice on. If you just want to take a piece, cut it out, and put it down onto something, it will minimize wrinkles. But depending on the material that you're using, it is going to affect the wrinkles if you're not very skilled. People, even if you are skilled, mistakes happen. I did the iron-on method to this piece quite some time ago using my own rice paper. And this is a problem I know people get, and I wanted to share how I tackle it. I didn't put enough medium on here. Sometimes when I'm making content, I rush things, and there are bubbles underneath of the rice paper in certain sections. I recommend a pin because it's finer. I could not find a pin at the current moment. Shocker, with all this, craft stuff around, I couldn't find something. And I know what you're thinking, Brandy, why are you poking holes in your pretty design? Listen, in order for us to fix this, we have got to figure out how to get medium in there, okay? No amount of us slopping more medium on the top of it is going to fix it. So stop doing that if you're doing it. All you're doing if you're using tissue paper and rice paper is making your paper soggy. It's not porous like a napkin. Slopping more medium on there isn't going to fix your problem. It's going to make it worse, make the wrinkles worse, and it's going to make you hate what you just tried to fix, okay? So once you get your little pinholes in there, and you can put multiple ones in there. If you use a pin, it's going to be much tinier. And then you're going to take your medium and you're going to apply thin layers over top, gingerly going back and forth. That medium is going to squeeze inside those pinholes. You might need to let it dry 1 or 2 times. Put a couple more pinholes in there just to feel safe. Do another layer. And then once everything is dry, grab your parchment paper and grab your iron. That's right, we're going to need to bring on in the iron and do a once over at the top. You'll notice here that the paper no longer has bubbles underneath of it. It is completely flat to the surface and it looks beautiful. If you're looking for more decoupage inspiration, check out this video right here. And as always, people, thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. And until next time.